Hi everyone, Internet PCS book reader here. Today I want to talk about The Light Eaters by schlangers. My hair has been getting better after a week or so I decided to finally go back to some non-fiction. There have always been some question if plants have intelligence and how they use them during their life. And no, not in the way of anti-vegan going all booga booga and countering vegans that plants life matters, or whatever cringe they like to say, which I don't care for even if I'm not vegan. What I mean is question in ways that is trying to answer curiosity. Plants has always been such an inspiration in many ways. Forest and horror is such an iconic duo. Magic and plants is such a good combination because of chemistry. And fantasy from Lord of the Rings to Berserk love their living trees. Hell, even Marvel had one. We have always imagined plants being alive, and there must be people wondering about how much alive are they. And it's because of that sense of wonder that I wanted to dissect this book in a video, even if the topic only makes the channel further from monetization. Even before us, plants have been food for many animals, from elks grazing on the grass to caterpillar munching on leaves. Caterpillar that will eventually turn into moths and butterflies who then needed the plants to still be alive for the flowers that contain their new food. But of course, if they add all the leaves, there will be no flowers for them to survive. So one of the first cases that the book provides as evidence of intellect in plants is actually because they release chemicals that made their leaves taste bad for the caterpillars, so they won't overeat their leaves under normal circumstances. Although at first glance it seems like a competition about survival of the fittest, but all parties involved gain something here. The caterpillar ate the plant turned them to butterflies, and the butterflies ate from the flowers that contain pollens and then spread the plant so it'll grow in other many places. Although most plants live in this constant motion of balance, some do live differently. And it raises questions in scientists who studied botany, how do plants live? And more importantly, what are plants? And unlike most other fields of science, there's not that much answer yet to this, which is surprising considering understanding plants might be able to help us become better at a lot of useful things like for example farming. The author is a journalist who has been covering a lot of climate change, which can be a very depressing research topic because a lot about it remains hopeless to this day, since the people who ruin it systematically refuse to change the system that benefit them the most. So she took to writing this book to regain some of the hope that she lost from covering climate change and the effect it have lost, the current worsening disasters, or the permafrost in Siberia that is no longer permanent due to heat waves getting hotter for longer. She wanted to look at the study of plants, our main source of life. She started her study by looking at ferns Azolla filiculoides. Studies has found that ferns had one of the largest genomes, far more than human despite the size difference. And they might even have cooled the planet during its hottest state, and we are researching the possibility of it doing so again right now. And they also have a special pocket that fixes nitrogen, which is why farmers in China and Vietnam have been grinding azolla into their rice paddies for centuries. And after finding out more information about ferns through books written by Oliver Sacks, yes, the same Oliver Sacks whose book about neurology I have read too, the author went on a journey to reading a lot more books and studies about plants and how much they have their own ecological friends and families. I mean, even ferns have a lot of variety, from the tiny azolla that can be made into fertilizer that I just mentioned, the tree ferns that can grow as tall as trees can grow, to bracken ferns that can kill even cows if they happen to eat them. Ferns even have sperm, which is how they have sex and produce even more sperms, and the way they compete with each other is by emitting a hormone that causes their neighbor to produce less sperm, so they have more nutrition for themselves by reducing the population of others. And this is one of the first evidence of plant behavior that highly suggests that they do have intelligence, an idea that has unfortunately been muddied by the pseudoscience that the secret life of plants made decades ago. A study so full of lies and myth that becomes more popular because Hollywood made it into a movie that made research to plant to life harder to get funds. So for decades, research on plants' life slowed down. Even after genetic sequencing and advanced microscope, scientists still hold back from using terms like plant intelligence. But from the few research we do have, it shows even more how much more sophisticated plant behaviors are. Some plants will recognize that their neighbors are their siblings and will move their leaves so as not to block them from the sun. Peacock can hear water flowing even from pipes and will grow their roots to the pipe's direction. Lima beans and tobacco react to attack of insect by summoning specific predators to the insect that are threatening their lives. This research and more show evidence that plants do show signs of lifestyle or pattern of behavior that signal their capabilities for thinking. And the author came just at the right time to this researcher to learn more how much intelligence do plants have when compared to ours. Plants are gluttonous creatures, but thankfully most of them eat through photosynthesis, a process where plants use solar power so they can suck in carbon dioxide, oxygen, and flowing water to produce glucose that will be used to produce more leaves, that produce even more glucose. And eventually those glucose will be used to create more roots to find more water. And that's how, despite being stationary creatures, plants can distribute themselves so far and wide. The other than meets Steve Perman, a rare plant botanist who is working for Hawaii's plant extinction program. In Kauai, a place formed by a volcano that caused it to have thousands of variations from a few species, with a few new variations found exclusively on the island. But because the islands are so remote, most of the plants have no defenses against outside interference like human interference. As usual, comes us, and because of us, a lot of species in Hawaii has started to go extinct, with even more going endangered. That's why Perman is there, trying to save some of the plants from going extinct. And based on their research on Hawaii and a ton of others that are still ongoing, more and more evidence is found that plants have some cognition thought they are comparable to at least animals. Their behavior can change depending on external circumstances. We're still not 100% sure yet because the study is not as much as we have in animals, so different angles of study are being done to confirm this. One of the person who spearheaded the study on plants are actually Charles Darwin. That's Charles Darwin, the evolution guy. After he wrote on the origin of species, he shifted his focus on plants, making mostly books and study on them. Take for example his penultimate book on the power of movement in plants that studied why plants move the way they did. Experimenting with tons of plant roots, he and his son Francis found that there are cuticles that seem to be the command center of plants. If you hurt it in any way like poking them, they'll grow away from the direction of those harms. If you put healthy soil near it, it will grow the direction to those soil. Put rocks and clays randomly and they will avoid the rocks long before they hit them, going through the clays like they're taking paths to avoid the rocks purposely. It was a study that is way ahead of its time, but unfortunately, the secret life of plants that I've mentioned before, which by the way are strangely done by the CIA like its Project Cyclone, held the study on plants back 2 months, making studies on them hard to do for a while. It was not until much later when a group of veteran scientists formed the Society for Plant Neurobiology that more progress are being done. While the name is purposely dramatic to counter the holes caused by the CIA, their study is still very well done, and they found that plants also have glutamate and glycine, neurotransmitters that existed in animals. But despite their finding, their name alone caused them to get a lot of pushback. The society tried to backtrack a bit by renaming the group into the Society of Plant Signaling and Behavior, which is far lamer, but it didn't matter. Many people still attack their findings through hyperfixating on choices of words on the study, like the war on work. Since it's mostly playground insults, the research continues. Around 1978, more research showed that plants communicate with each other when they found that all of a sudden, a lot of caterpillar was found dead at around the same time when they were once thriving. It's because the plant that got attacked by the bugs all started to somehow communicate with other plants that they are being attacked, so the other plants released some form of chemicals that repel bugs before the bugs were even on them, causing the bugs to die of hunger. Another similar case happened in 1985 with Wouter van Hoven acacia trees that is getting attacked by kudu. After a while, the kudu all die from eating the acacia trees because they turn poisonous. The acacia straight up murdered the kudus. Another interesting aspect of the case is that the giraffe that is nearby is safe because they only ate the farthest tree away from the wind. So they only ate from trees that has not received the news of the kudu attack yet, making the acacia leaf they ate safe. Some other more advanced study from Rick Carbon even found that plants might even have personality or at least taste in what they like. And we're not even talking yet about sensitive plants that reacted to thoughts like Venus flytrap or Mimosa pudica. Movements that are based on electrical sensation, where some studies have found traces of behavior that look like it is based on nervous system, like in animals. And it is possible that unlike animals who have a brain located somewhere in their body, plants' entire body itself are its brain. And with it, they can remember things, talk among themselves through various means, talk to other species like animals, they can see like sources and move towards it, and more, there are way more interesting things that we find through studying plants, which this book, for what it's worth, did a great job at documenting and describing them. The writing can be a bit rough in the book, and I had a hard time figuring out who this book is written for, because it is definitely not written for general public, for its use of language such as fractal and brethren in places where if the author chooses, they can use easier and more familiar daily life vocabulary, which if the author truly wanted to tell this story to the general public, they should have done so. But instead, they use a lot of vocabulary that are already outside of the current zeitgeist, I guess. and the people who use them are often scientists that possibly already know about the plant studies that is being written in this book. And that's before we mention about the author's own life that she plays here and there in the book, making the book target demographic feel hazy and unclear. And speaking of the author's own life, a small chunk of the book is the author's memoir, but it's not that well written. A lot of the not normally used word was in the memoir parts of her life instead of parts where she is discussing the scientific study of plant life. How is it possible that memoirs are filled with more words you'll need to Google compared to the science ones? That feels wrong somehow. Besides that, the book also keeps going back and forth between studies about life form from millennia ago and recent finding of plants' behavior, because each chapter started with a little bit of herself and what life back then must have looked like before going into talking about the plants, making the book feels repetitive after a while. A lot of it feels like padding to get the book into a certain number of pages. But the uniqueness of the topic discussed in this book is still very worthy to read if you wanted to learn more about plants. I don't think it's the most important thing to learn about, and I'm sure most people will skip this, but surely someone somewhere might be interested in this very specific topic. I give this a 3. What do you think? Let me know if I miss anything, so leave your thoughts in the comment below and subscribe to the channel. That's about it. See ya.